So I know I'm a little bit late doing this as the NHL Network released their top 20 centers in the NHL. I believe it was last week. They're doing this, I believe, with every position. They just released the wingers, and I've seen everybody making their list, and I've had a lot of people ask me what I thought about it, so I decided to just go ahead. I know it's late, but I didn't really have a video planned for tomorrow, so I just decided to this, and I'm going to be giving you guys my top 20 centers in the NHL, and remember, this is my pure opinion. If you don't agree with it, you don't have to hate. Just let me know what your top 20 would be down in the comment section below, and with that being said, let's start off the video with number 20. At 20 is Matthew Barzal, and he actually wasn't even on the NHL Network's list, and that's probably rightfully so, as he's only had one season in the NHL. But to me, he looked like an absolute superstar in the making. He led the New York Islanders with points, finishing ahead of John Tavares. And yes, you could argue that is because John Tavares had to play against the other team's top lines. And Matthew Barzal was just the second line center, and we're really going to get a taste of what he's capable of next season without John Tavares. And personally, I think he's going to thrive under the spotlight of being the best player on a team. At number 19 is Logan Couture of the San Jose Sharks, and to me, if you were to ask me who was the best player on the Sharks last season, I would have to go with Logan Couture. I think he was just the most consistent. He looked pretty good in the playoffs as well, and to me, he doesn't get a lot of recognition because he plays out on the West Coast. I feel like teams like Anaheim, San Jose, and LA don't really get talked about as much over here in Canada and a little bit up in the United States, but Logan Couture certainly is a fantastic player, and he kind of gets overshadowed by guys like Joe Pavelski and Brent Burns, but to me, he is the best center on that team. At number 18 is Patrice Bergeron of the Boston Bruins, one of, if not the best two-way forwards in the entire NHL. It seems like this guy wins the Selke Trophy every single year, and yes, I'm pretty sure his point production is probably going to start to decline over the next couple of seasons, but I don't think his two-way ability will, and his leadership either, this making him, in my opinion, still one of the top centers in the entire NHL. At number 17, I have Sean Couturier of the Philadelphia Flyers, and like Patrice Bergeron, this guy is probably going to stack up a lot of Selke trophies when his career is all said and done. This past season, in my opinion, he really established himself as a star player in the NHL, playing absolutely amazing for the Philadelphia Flyers on that top line, putting up a really good amount of points, and being one of the best defensive forwards in the entire league, and I think he's definitely going to only start climbing this list in the next couple of seasons. Next up at number 16 is Nicholas Backstrom of the Washington Capitals, and in my opinion, if it wasn't for the continued growth and really the new superstardom of Evgeny Kuznetsov, this guy still would be higher up on this list. So I have him at number 16 because I still think he's an amazing center, but definitely not the player he once was, as I don't really think he's the best center on the Washington Capitals anymore. That being said, he still is probably one of the best playmakers in the entire NHL and is still going to be a top center in the league for the next couple of seasons. At number 15, I have Eric Staal, and if you were to ask me if Eric Staal was going to be a top 20 center in the league 3 years ago, I would have said you're absolutely insane, but he really has revitalized his career with the Minnesota Wild and has been an MVP caliber player. Obviously, he scored 40 goals this past season, and I definitely think he still has the capability to keep up with this production for the next couple of seasons. This, in my opinion, still making him one of the top centers in the NHL. Obviously, he wasn't a couple years ago, but players do have their downtime, and Eric Staal certainly is still looking like a top center in the NHL, and a lot of people would really love to have him on their team. At number 14 is Jack Eichel, and I definitely think he would be higher up on this list if it hasn't been for the injuries he's accumulated over his career so far. Obviously, it has been a little bit of a shaky start, but I think next year we could see Jack Eichel really come into his own and become a superstar in the NHL, especially with the Buffalo Sabres team getting better around him, and I definitely think as soon as next season we could see him probably up in the top 8 or maybe even the top 5. At number 13, I have the other star center on the Washington Capitals, Evgeny Kuznetsov, and in my opinion, this is a guy who thrives in the spotlight. He played absolutely unbelievable in the postseason, and you could argue if it wasn't for him, they would not have made it to the Stanley Cup Finals or win the Stanley Cup. Obviously, he scored that goal to eliminate the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I think in the coming seasons, Evgeny Kuznetsov is only going to climb this list. He's still young, and I think he's a guy who we can see put up around 90 to 95 points. I think this is just the beginning of an amazing career for Evgeny Kuznetsov. At number 12, I have Tyler Seguin of the Dallas Stars. Obviously, this guy is an offensively gifted player. I'm pretty sure the Boston Bruins would still like to have Tyler Seguin on their team right now, because could you imagine that roster? but he is on the Dallas Stars, one of the best goal scorers in the league. He scored 40 last season, and I definitely think with him still being in his prime, he's going to be able to build off that, and he's still going to be a top 15 center in the NHL for the next coming seasons. I don't see him slowing down anytime soon, and hopefully Dallas can put the team around him so that they can really be a contender. At number 11, I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, especially from Leafs fans. I have Austin Matthews. At this point, after 2 seasons, I don't think he's a top 10 center in the NHL just yet. In my opinion, he shied away a little bit in the playoffs this past year, but obviously he's still young, he's still learning, and he would have been on pace for around 85 to 90 points if he were to stay healthy, and I definitely think next season Austin Matthews is going to establish himself as a top 5 center in the NHL. He's more than capable of doing so, and especially with the Leafs only getting better around this guy, and him not really having to log all the offensive minutes now with them having John Tavares, he's definitely going to skyrocket up this list and be probably one of the top point production players in the NHL. Starting off the top 10, we have Alexander Barkov of the Florida Panthers, and to me this guy is an absolute tank, and if the Florida Panthers do make the playoffs next year, I think we could hear his name being thrown around in Hart Trophy conversation because I really do think he is that good. If he can get that point total up to around 85 to 90 points and still be the defensive machine that he is and win that Selke Trophy, which I think he was robbed of this past season, he in my opinion really could establish himself as not only one of the top centers in the NHL but one of the best overall players in the entire league. Next up at number 9, we have Ryan Getzlaf of the Anaheim Ducks, and to me he's just so important to that team and they play so much better when he's in the lineup that I have to have him in my top 10. He's still a fantastic offensive player as well, as he was on pace to be around a point per game if he was to stay healthy, and I definitely think he can keep that up for a few more seasons. He's an absolute tank out there. He still makes the Anaheim Ducks so much better, and they kind of look lost when he's not in the lineup, so in my opinion he still is one of the top centers in the game, even though he may be declining in the next couple of seasons. At number 8, we have the other star center of the Toronto Maple Leafs, John Tavares. That still sounds a little bit weird to say, but nonetheless he is a member of the Leafs and I think he's going to thrive in this position. He put up 80 plus points this past season with the New York Islanders, and I think next year for the Leafs he is capable of being a player who can crack 100, and I'm very excited to see what he does in the playoffs with a team that is favored to win, because when he was on the New York Islanders all the focus was on him, and now with the Toronto Maple Leafs you can't really just try to shut down John Tavares because then guys like Matthews, Marner, and Nylander are going to kill you on the score sheet. So it's going to be very exciting to see how he plays, and he certainly to me is still a top 10 center in the NHL. At number 7 is Mark Scheifele of the Winnipeg Jets, and to me he really showed us that he is a superstar in the NHL with the postseason run that he had with the Jets. It seemed like he was scoring a goal every single playoff game. I believe until the last little bit he was leading the playoffs in goal scoring, and they only made it to the conference finals. I think Alex Ovechkin edged him out a little bit at the end, but he certainly did show us a lot, and I'm hoping he can stay healthy for the entire 2018-19 season because in my opinion, he could be a guy who, like Barkov, could be a dark horse to win the Hart Trophy. At number 6 is Steven Stamkos of the Tampa Bay Lightning, an amazing offensive player, so fun to watch, and yes, you could argue he does kind of shy away from the spotlight and doesn't come up big when it really matters, and that's why the Tampa Bay Lightning haven't been able to win that Stanley Cup, and you could argue that he's not even the best player on his team, but you can't argue with talent. He is still one of the best players in the NHL, and I definitely think if he can lead the Tampa Bay Lightning to the finals next year, even if they don't win the Cup, if he puts up a good showing in the playoffs and plays a pivotal role in what they do, he could climb up this list because he certainly has the talent to. At number 5 is Nathan MacKinnon of the Colorado Avalanche. What an absolute machine this guy was this past season. When he gets going at full speed, he's just so strong and so fast, it's like he cannot be denied from scoring a goal. In my opinion, he probably would be my pick for the funnest player to watch in the NHL. He can turn and go and get going at full speed in about 3 seconds. It's really an amazing sight to see, and I definitely think this is only the start of what is to come for Nathan MacKinnon. And a lot of people say this could be a career year, but for me, this is something I see sustainable, and I definitely think Nathan MacKinnon can be a guy that puts up 100 points on a regular basis. If not 100, definitely 95 plus, and if Colorado does continue to be a playoff team, he certainly could be one of the most valuable players in the NHL for the next 7 to 10 years. At number 4, I have Anze Kopitar of the Los Angeles Kings, A guy who plays so well in the defensive zone, and the offensive numbers he put up this past season was absolutely amazing. If you were to ask me the season before if he would be a top 5 center in the league, I would say absolutely not, but he bounced back in a huge way and showed he still is one of the top players in the NHL, and this is something I can think he can sustain for the next couple of seasons. I certainly hope so, because he really is fun to watch. I remember that game where he scored 4 goals, looked like an absolute machine out there, and for the LA Kings, he is their most valuable player, and in my opinion, this makes him a top 5 center in the NHL. At number 3, I have Evgeny Malkin of the Pittsburgh Penguins, a guy who gets overshadowed obviously because he plays under the shadow of Sidney Crosby, but to me this guy is one of the best players we have ever seen in the NHL. He's so offensively gifted, and for a guy his size, the things he can do with the puck going full speed is absolutely a thing of beauty to watch. And yes, you could argue that the Pittsburgh Penguins would not have won those Stanley Cups without Evgeny Malkin. He really is a pivotal piece to this team, and I definitely think if he were to play on any other team in the NHL, he would be the #1 guy. And it really does suck that we'll never probably get to see that happen in what he could do being a #1 player. But all in all, he still is, in my opinion, one of the top players in the NHL and certainly a top 3 center. And at number 2, I have Sidney Crosby, and this is where it does get controversial. Who's #1, Crosby or McDavid? As obviously you guys now know, I have McDavid at #1. But to me, Sidney Crosby no longer has that label as the best player in the NHL. You could argue he's the best all-around player, but to me, the most valuable player to their team and just the best player in the NHL is Connor McDavid. I don't think it's Sidney Crosby anymore. That's just my personal opinion. I still think he is the second best player in the league because the things this guy can do is absolutely amazing. If you were to ask me who I want to take a shot to win you the Stanley Cup, and if you miss, you lose, I would choose Crosby because he's clutch, but to me the overall best player in the NHL is no longer Crosby, but certainly he is the #2 center in my opinion. And now obviously at #1 I have Connor McDavid. To me this guy is just an absolutely amazing player, a generational talent, and back-to-back 100-point seasons, a Hart Trophy, a couple Ted Lindsays, a couple Art Ross trophies. His talent really is undeniable, and to me he is the best player in the NHL. If you were to ask me who do you want on your team for one season if you are going for a Stanley Cup, I probably would pick Connor McDavid over Sidney Crosby. I don't think anyone has a chance of winning his scoring title from Connor McDavid in the next 8 seasons unless he is to get injured or something. But when healthy, I definitely think he is the best player in the NHL. I hope the Edmonton Oilers can bounce back because Connor McDavid still played amazing, just the team in general just wasn't very good this past season. But in my opinion, they will bounce back, and Connor McDavid probably when healthy will still put up another 100-point season and be another Hart Trophy winner next year. Just an absolutely amazing player. The center position really is stacked in the NHL, but to me I have Connor McDavid at #1. So that does it for my top 20 list of the best centers in the NHL, and like I said at the beginning of the video, don't hate if you don't disagree. This literally is just my pure opinion. Make sure you guys let me know yours down in the comment section below. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.